Hello and welcome to this special coffee moaning. Mark and I are a bit of a mixture of nervous and excited.
No, really privileged actually to get a chance to talk to Dr. David Miller, obviously in the aftermath of him winning the appeal. He'd already won the case, but then University of Bristol appealed against it. He won his landmark victory in his anti-Zionist belief discrimination claim. It's a massive victory. It essentially enshrines in law anti-Zionism as a political ideology or belief.
A protected belief.
A protected belief.
That you cannot get sacked for, you cannot be discriminated against for having that opinion.
Let's just bring you in, David.
Oh, David! Oh my goodness! Mark and I were just saying we actually feel a bit nervous
because this matters so much.
It matters so much. You won't know that on the day when the appeal came through. First of all, we feel a bit like family because we have the same lawyers, right? Rahman lawyers, and you won't know this, but like all the WhatsApp groups and everything were like pinging off crazy because it just has meant so much, this ruling, so much.
For so many people.
Yeah. It's been a hard few years. You know, this is no joke, this kind of a case, is it? And then, of course, winning it and then the appeal.
It started in February, on the 18th of February, 2019, when I innocently gave a lecture, a rather innocent lecture, if I might add, which was then complained about in April that year. And after that, it was continuous.
Is it right that it was a group of students that actually complained?
So, well, I started at the University of Bristol in October 2018. I'd previously been Professor of Sociology at Strathclyde from 2004, then in Bath from 2012. And on the 18th of February, I gave this lecture on Islamophobia, part of a course on what was called Harms of the Powerful, which I'd been given when I arrived. And in that lecture, I spent about 3.5 minutes talking about the role of Zionism in pushing Islamophobia based on research that I'd done. Now, we know it's 3.5 minutes because one of the students recorded it and leaked it later to the Jewish News. So you can go back and listen to what it was exactly I said, which caused all the furore. So anyhow, so the two students apparently complained to the Community Security Trust, which I'd had previous form with. So the CST then approached the Union of Jewish Students in London, who then approached the Jewish Society in Bristol, which is a member of the UJS, both of which, of course, are Zionist organizations. And they took that complaint, and in the summer of 2019, they dismissed the complaint, said it was, well, not founded, let's put it politely. And then what happened was that the student complained that the university hadn't adopted the IHRA definition, working definition of anti-Semitism. And the university wrote back to her and said, well, you can bring your complaint back in shortly once the university decides if it's going to adopt the definition. So in December of that year, 2019, the university duly adopted the IHRA under pressure from the JSOC, who mounted a demonstration outside. And in the January of 2020, the complaint was resurrected again and was put to an external QC who spent most of the year up until December doing a report which concluded that nothing I had said in the lecture or in the complaint, not a single one of them was illegal, was racist, was anti-Semitic, and had a complete clean bill of health. But at that stage, I was still getting press inquiries saying, you are an anti-Semite, what do you have to say for yourself? So I tried to get the university to rebut those statements because they had now agreed that I wasn't, but they wouldn't. So the problem was that they were going to put out a variety or a version of the report, but they wanted me to commit not to talking about it.
Wow.
So that was obviously never going to fly. And then 6 weeks later, I went on a meeting about free speech, and I said, and I remember the words, I've been attacked and complained about. Those were the words which by student groups, by student Zionist groups. And those are the words which got me investigated again by the university, despite there not being a complaint. And again, the same QC found me not guilty of anti-Semitism, but they said I should be sacked because I had brought the students into debate. They sacked me, and then you know the rest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, very much a sort of systemic and constant attempt to get you unseated, removed, fired, punished, if you like.
Career ended.
Career ended.
Yeah.
what were the actual, what were the specific accusations at the very end there when they actually fired you? What was used when they actually contacted you and said, because I'm going through a process with the Green Party where I received a document of suspension, and the question I'm constantly asked by everyone is, what did you do?
So it was the things that I had said at the free speech meeting.
Right.
So it was the fact that I had said I've been attacked and complained about by the president of the JSOC and the president of the UJS, which are both, of course, Zionist organizations. So that was held to have created the issue. Wow. There had been nothing before. And I brought the students into discussion. This was held to be unprofessional, even if it wasn't anti-Semitic. And that was the basis on which they sacked me. Of course, I also made some other statements, which I've since referred to as being rather polite. But I said that there's a real question about harm being done on campuses by student groups who are. There's a question of whether those student groups might be pawns of a hostile foreign racist regime. Now, as we know now, it wasn't a question. They weren't pawns. They were actual agents of the hostile foreign regime. So what they complained about was the fact that I brought students into the dispute. Now, of course, the students were already in the dispute since they started the dispute.
Yes.
Oh my God, the injustice of that is so choking, isn't it? It's choking. We've had this with the Green Party. It drive you crazy. You can think like you're the crazy one.
Yeah. So
I think you've had real moments of that.
They said that, of course, that the issue was that I was a powerful white old male professor, and of course, actually, it was the entire Zionist movement which was behind this. Now, in the case of the student groups themselves, the members, the committee members, and the president of the Bristol JSOC, they had all of them had been through Zionist radicalization through their synagogues, through their schools, through youth groups, through trips to Israel before they came to university. Now, of course, when they were giving evidence to the inquiry, they said, "Oh well, I'm only a 20-year-old living my life. I didn't know anything about this." But actually, when you looked into it, we did look into it at the time, and we provided the evidence on this. They had all been through Zionist radicalization processes.
Could you just, because we always hope we're bringing new people to the discussion that are still scared of saying anti-Zionist and still believing that means you're an anti-Semite. Can you just define anti-Zionism as you think it? What is an anti-Zionist?
So, I defined it in writing in my witness statement, which is 100 pages long, but the bit with the definition is really very short. And I would, before I say what it is, I'd like to emphasize that there isn't, although the Zionists and some people who don't like talking about Zionists or Zionism will say that it's complicated and it means different things to different people. I don't believe that's the case. Actually, what I believe about Zionism and what they believe about Zionism is exactly the same. It's just that they believe it's a good thing and I believe it's a bad thing. So I define Zionism as the ideology and the project to build a Jewish state in the territory formerly comprised of the British Mandate of Palestine. That's it. Right? And now they say, oh, it's the Jews' indigenous lands and we're simply returning, etc. They add all that stuff on, but actually the core definition is the same. They wanted a Jewish state in the land of Palestine when there were already Palestinians who they had to expel, and they knew they had to expel them, and they planned to expel them, and all of that comes consequent on the definition. So I said, that definition, I hold that means that Zionism is racism, that it must inherently be racism, because you can't construct a state in someone else's land and expel them and kick them out and kill them, and then of course try and repeat it as we've seen in the last three years without it being racism. And equally, I given that they expel them and they colonize the land, it's also intrinsically colonial and imperialist. It's a straightforward factual definition about what Zionism is, and the Zionists don't actually disagree with it. They just add on other bits, the bells where they think it's nice, and we add on the other stuff, which is what we say objectively, this is not nice. You can't make this kind of omelette without breaking the eggs, and the eggs aren't ideal.
I mean, often I find I get the pushback, and I have had this pushback, how do I say this diplomatically, from various quarters within the political establishment, that there are different shades of Zionism.
Yes.
And that to be anti-Zionist really will be perceived and read by those who are at the more liberal end of Zionism as profoundly anti-Semitic and anti-Israel.
Sure.
So the idea being there's a spectrum of Zionism, and that there's a really sort of, and I'm not belittling it, but sort of gentler, more liberal side of it. I mean, I'm experiencing this in the Green Party specifically. What do you make of that shades of Zionism argument?
So that's not an argument which is used by Zionists and indeed by apologists for Zionism, but as well as, I think actually some anti-Zionists use that kind of argument. So I saw in response to my victory last week, some anti-Zionists, including from the Jewish Voice for Liberation, formerly Jewish Voice for Labour, congratulating me in my steadfastness, etc., with the victory, but saying also that really that Zionism is more complicated than just what I've been suggesting. And so that's an argument which is used across elements of the political spectrum. Now, yes, of course there are liberal Zionists, there are socialists, there were communist Zionists, but all of them held that there was a right for Jews to occupy the land of Palestine, which was superior to that of the inhabitants. Even if they believed in a two-state solution, they still believe in the right of a Jewish state, where Jews have more rights than everybody else, than the indigenous inhabitants. Now that is Zionism. It doesn't matter if you think that Netanyahu shouldn't kill so many people or shouldn't do it in the way he does. You still believe in the right of Jews to have superior rights in the Levant, and that makes you a Zionist, and that is fundamentally ipso facto racist. And so it doesn't matter. This and all this stuff about, oh, in my heart I'm a nice Zionist. Well, there is only the practical Zionist movement.
Yeah. No, if you look at the pure definition of it. And the thing is, a lot of people don't realize that there are many Zionists that, of course, are not Jewish.
Yeah,
Biden, a committed Zionist, many. And so I never really understand why there is an argument as to whether it's a political ideology or not, because we got an awful lot of politicians that declare themselves Zionists and are very happy to point the finger at even Jewish people and call them anti-Semites.
Sure.
That is it's so messed up, that whole banana of it.
It is, and of course there are Christian Zionists, and of course some people say that, well, because there's so many Christian Zionists, it's not really a Jewish project. But actually, the Christian Zionists, although they are more numerous, for example, in the US than there are Jewish Zionists, it's the leadership of the movement is run by Jewish Zionists. All of the Zionist lobby groups, with the exception of the much smaller Christian Zionist lobby groups, are run by Jewish Zionists, with one or two Christians perhaps on board. So, for example, like Major Richard Kemp, who is part of a charity which sends funds to the occupation forces. So that's important to say. But also, of course, let's remember there are Arab Zionists. So the government of the United Arab Emirates, the government of Morocco, which are key elements of the Abraham Accords to normalize Zionism, are effectively Arab Zionists and effectively help to run Zionist propaganda. So the UAE, for example, facing what it thought was internal unrest over the Arab Spring, thinking that the Muslim Brotherhood were going to take over the country, which actually was a fantasy. But anyhow, they as a result of that, they started to collaborate with the Zionists on international propaganda. So for example, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C., which is a Netanyahu-like a think tank that was also funded by the UAE. The UAE tried to and succeeded in pressuring the British government to investigate the role of the Muslim Brotherhood in the UK under the pressure of cancelling BP and British aerospace arms contracts. And as a result, David Cameron instituted such an inquiry under a former MI6 officer. So that kind of spreading of Zionist messages also comes from Arab Zionists, and you find them in Jordan as well, and in Lebanon too, and many other places.
Obviously, there are the Zionist lobby groups. There are the Israeli, political lobby groups, Labour Friends of Israel, Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, UK Lawyers for Israel, etc., AIPAC. But I just wanted to focus back again to your particular experience, because of course the University of Bristol becomes the tool or the weapon that the lobby groups kind of use to silence the employee. And I'm fascinated by this almost proxy conflict or proxy move that happens, which Nadia's kind of going through something similar with ITV. I'm going through the same with the Green Party, allegedly. I'm going through something similarly with the Green Party. It feels allegedly, but if you look at my suspension sheet, it's pretty damn certain. And it's the groups that become used that are like rabbits caught in headlights.
Yes. Yes, I think that's right. I mean, I've been asked about this. Do you think that it was Zionists high up in the hierarchy at the University of Bristol that did for you? And I don't think that's true. I mean, the people who were high up never showed any signs of being convinced Zionists or even secret Zionists, and they just didn't know what to do in the circumstances. You know, professional bodies, universities, or the regulatory bodies of accountants or lawyers or doctors, they just don't understand and know what to do when they're faced with bad faith accusations. They assume that accusations and complaints might be personally motivated, but they don't understand that there can be a campaign group deliberately picking off Muslim doctors or Muslim lawyers or whatever, and they don't know what to do about that, because all of their liberal rules and regulations means that you've got to investigate complaints if they come in, and and then you've got to use the relevant guidelines, which might be the IHRA, and that, of course, is what you will be faced with, Mark, in the Green Party, where the regulations, although they reject the IHRA in some respects, were actually drafted by the Zionist lobby group within the Greens, the Jewish Greens, which I've written a piece about, which will be out shortly. So that is how it works. Internally in the university, yes, there were Zionist staff at the university, 45 of them, who wrote calling for me to be sacked. Yes, there were Zionist student groups, and yes, there were funders and donors to the University of Bristol who complained about me and tried to have me sacked. Oh, and of course, there was the famous case of one of the University of Bristol's alumni who said that he wasn't going to collaborate with the university until the Miller business was sorted out. And that, of course, was Matt Lucas.
I was so shocked by that. I mean, my God, I couldn't believe that. I was really,
So my feeling is that they weren't Zionists, and they just didn't know how to handle it. In fact, the guy who investigated me in the final investigation, who was the one who said that there was a case to answer for disciplinary, and then I went to disciplinary and I was sacked. He said in the tribunal at the end, and there was a sort of a little backwards and forwards between my lawyers and their lawyers about whether he was allowed to answer this question. And he was asked about whether he agreed with my views, and he said that he did. And he'd still done this investigation, which was fundamentally biased, as the tribunal recognised in the end. So that was that. And the other thing was, of course, the most senior university witness at the tribunal, Professor Judith Squires. She was caught in a terrible trap of their own making, because at the beginning of the tribunal, they changed their case. They went from saying that they didn't think that I was an anti-Semite, and they thought that my views were worthy of protection in a democratic society, to saying that my views were not worthy of protection in a democratic society. And so she came onto the stand and she said that to my lawyer, and my lawyer said to her, "So do you think then that Professor Miller's views are akin to Nazism?"
Oh.
And she sat back in her chair. She didn't think that. And he said, "Well, of course, you must know, Professor Squires, that is the definition of not worthy of respect in the democratic society." And she didn't know. She hadn't been properly briefed. She didn't know what she was saying. And so she was really flummoxed. And so that was the first moment which destroyed their case. And the second moment was when my lawyer took her through a hypothetical case. And they said, imagine that the white people of England expel all the non-white people, and they expel them to Wales or Cornwall. And there was a priceless moment. The judge then intervened and said to my lawyer, "Do you mean all of the non-white people?" And my lawyer said, "Oh, of course, no, not all of them, 3/4 of them."
Oh,
and then the rest of them, who were not expelled, were denied rights in jobs and housing and in
water, electricity,
all of that stuff. Right? He said all of that stuff, and so he said to her, "Would it be right or correct to say that Anglo-Saxonism is racism?" And she said, "Yes, it would be correct. Yes." Wow. And would it be wrong for a professor to say that they should oppose Anglo-Saxonism? No, it would not be correct. Wow. And so she was completely destroyed. And he then, of course, took her through the comparable example. Would it be the case that if the Zionists arrived and they expelled the Palestinians, would that be racist? So she, in the end, was both agreeing that Zionism was racism and that saying that Zionism was racism was akin to Nazism. So the case was lost.
So, see, this is why it's so important to keep calling this out. For so long, the word anti-Semitism would be thrown at people and they would run terrified of that word. We all know we are not anti-Semitic. And we are now, more and more people are standing up and say, well, actually, maybe it's not going to be the easiest route for an employer to just say, oh, we'll fold at this point, because otherwise it's all going to be just too awful. Because I think they've had it that way for so long. And I agree. I think there's many employers that don't want to do this at all. But it's just like, it'll kind of be easier. And in that, they're wrecking people's careers. I mean, this, if you hadn't won this, this would have been the end of your career, wouldn't it? 20 years, a professor. There's got to be an end to this. And what I wanted to ask you about with that was, how much of an impact do you think this will have, this ruling, on the lobbies, on those that do try to get people sacked for being anti-Zionist? How do you think it's going to play now?
Well, I mean, it's now against the law to sack someone or discipline someone for being an anti-Zionist and for being an anti-Zionist and expressing their anti-Zionist views. Of course,
but employers rarely say that.
I was going to say they rarely admit it.
Rarely say anything.
So the university's case was, oh, well, it was fine about having anti-Zionist views. It's just that he couldn't talk about them, or the way he talked about them was wrong. You know, he shouldn't have used those words or something.
Yes.
And of course, the court determined that the way I'd expressed them was perfectly fine. They said that some of the things I had said were not so fine, but the anti-Zionist elements of it were all perfectly fine. And the question was whether there was a close and direct nexus between the manner of the expression and the underlying views, and the court ruled that there was. So you know, that's actually very, very difficult for employers. And we're already seeing how that's moving through the system. I'm aware of several cases in the UK involving doctors where their cases have been on hold awaiting this judgment, and the judgment has now been sent to the investigators in those cases, and we will see what the result of that is. I imagine that all employers who are engaged in this kind of activity are going to have to revise what they thought they should do and revise what their practices are, because it's not going to be possible. Because if anyone comes to a tribunal, they will win. What
I worry is, though, that they just might shift the accusation to something that is still permissible.
People thought that saying Zionism is racism was itself problematic, because it was said in the IHRA definition that to call Israel a racist endeavor was more or less the same as anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Well, it's not.
I want to ask you your advice, really, not necessarily legally or even academically, but just kind of experientially and emotionally. I mean, you went through something similar in with the Labour Party's Corbyn putsch, you know, that whole experience of being suspended or characterized as anti-Semitic for one's fierce criticism of Israel. I've been incredibly fierce. I've been incredibly fearsome in my criticism of Israel.
Yeah.
And I keep being told, you're the Corbyn in the Green Pack at the moment. I'm sort of feeling very isolated. Have you got any words of advice for me?
That's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, just be steadfast. I mean, I was suspended from the Labour Party once and then let back in, and then I was suspended again, and I resigned. And 4 hours later, they kicked me out. Too late. But you've got to be steadfast. I mean, the problem is that when you get accused of stuff, and you read the accusations, they're so often so pathetically written and so badly drafted. I find that routinely and repetitively. I mean, for example, I've got a case coming up against me at the Westminster Magistrates Court by the CAA, saying that some of my messages on Twitter were threatening under the 2003 Communications Act. Now, that case is most probably going to result in a big victory for us again as well, because the case is ridiculous. They had a similar loss against Reginald D. Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, the judge in that warned them and said, this is clearly, you can't, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, you can't just bring people here to be cancelled.
No. Yes, that's right. And I mean, the judge is very, very good judgment by a judge who, in other circumstances, has been quite hostile to the Palestinian cause. So that's a real sign that there are elements of the judiciary who are willing to be, straight about this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. How do you see the future for anti-Zionists or anti-Zionism? I mean, we have felt an enormous sense of hope from your case. We felt vindicated when we won against the Daily Mail. I feel I know the logic of what should happen with the Greens. Nadia's case with ITV is ongoing. How do you view the future? Should we be more optimistic now?
There is a feeling that more and more people are speaking out. I've never heard so many people talking about actually what's happened to them.
Yeah, look, I think we have to be front foot about all of this. Yes, cautious in the sense that we don't say things which are manifestly illegal, but front foot in the sense of being unapologetic about our views. Our views are on the right side of history, are correct, and fit in with the history of anti-racism. I mean, if you look at the website of the University of Bristol to this day, it has a statement on there about Black Lives Matter, saying that, of course, we must all unite to dismantle racism. And I brought that up in the case. I said, well, I agree with this. Why does the university not agree with this? And of course, the problem was that there's an exception. Zionism is somehow not a form of racism because it's complicated, or there's a spectrum of views or something like that, or it upsets people. Racists don't like being called racist, so you shouldn't call them racists. So I think the thing is to be steadfast, to be front foot. I've been consistently front foot, and when I'd be accused of things, I put out a statement of my beliefs rather than run around trying to apologise and worry if someone's feelings might have been hurt or said to be hurt. So I think that's the thing is to go front foot on this. We need more and more people to do that, and that will itself help to turn the tide. We're already seeing a large number of victories for anti-Zionists in the last 6 months or so, which we tried to cover on Palestine Declassified, the show that I produced with Press TV. So I think that we are, we're in a position where we might be able to start to turn the tide in the context where it looks like the Americans have been defeated in Iran, and that itself will have a knock-on effect much more widely in terms of people's confidence to take on Zionism.
Yeah. And I think, you played a huge part, I think, in inspiring people and giving people more courage to be front-footed. And, we agree. We know that it's coming from a really good place, what we're saying. It's coming from a humanitarian heart. And to stay on point. Don't let people distract you with tired old arguments. That's I think.
And just chiming in on that as well. Absolutely a huge thank you. But also I'd like to say, I mean, when October the 7th happened, very shortly after that, I was targeted by a very prominent individual in this country, famous actor. And they really were sort of almost trolling me with threats of how me sharing images of what the IDF were celebrating was in itself somehow a hate crime of some form. And I remember that moment back there was truly, for me, just as a white man, I was scared, not just for me, but I was like, oh my God, hang on a minute. There's a real attempt, a rapid, speedy attempt to criminalize something that feels instinctively right. That was my first experience of it. And I just think something that I've noticed also is that as more and more people wouldn't even necessarily call themselves anti-Zionist, but as you see the Israeli project reveal itself, everyone's finding themselves to be automatically anti-Zionist because they can't tolerate it.
Yeah.
Bit by bit. David, we are so enormously grateful for you to giving us your time.
Yeah.
And congratulations to you and Rahman Lawyers. It was a great, hard fought win, really, over years. A lot of money, amazing crowdfunding.
Yeah.
So thank you to all those people. And where can people find you? We'll put the links underneath, but where can people find you?
So I'm on X at Tracking Power. I'm also on the same username on Instagram and TikTok, I think. But also I produce a show called Palestine Declassified on Press TV, which is available on X and Rumble and various other places. Although the Home Office has tried to close us down, has not succeeded, I'm glad to say. So so I do all that, and of course I do journalism on UK Column and Electronic Intifada and Maya Dean and other places.
And we might find you back at University of Bristol.
Well, we might do. We have, as we're recording this, I know you're not putting this out live, but we're recording this particular section at 15:36 in the afternoon of Tuesday, the 11th of August. So they have approximately an hour and 24 minutes to lodge an appeal with the Employment Appeal Tribunal.
Oh my God, not another one.
In order to go to the Supreme Court. If they don't do that by 5 o'clock, there will be no Supreme Court appeal. And I doubt they'll want to go to the Court of Appeal, because the thing that they want to appeal is the Higgs judgment, which related to transgender issues. And that's already been to the appeal court. Yeah. And they have to be appealed at the Supreme Court. So we've got just over an hour to go. When this goes out, you'll be able to tell your viewers whether there is an appeal. And then after that, of course, we'll have a remedies hearing where it will be determined by the court whether I will be reinstated and how much compensation I might be due.
And I know many will think, what would you want to go back there? But it's very important, isn't it, that you go back to Bristol?
Because no other university in this country will employ me in an academic job. It's simply impossible. It's a career-ending job loss because of the amount of controversy, because the 100 members of the House of Lords and the House of Commons complained about me to be sacked, etc., etc. It would be impossible for me to get another job elsewhere. So I needed the University of Bristol to man up, as it were, yes. And to put me back in the position that I was, to show that it was wrong for them to sack me.
Oh my God! Well, good luck. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Thank you so much
for all your hard work.
Yeah.
Bless you. Thank you for spending time.
Thank you very much.
So we've actually just heard from David, haven't we? Yeah. He's just texted us, and it seems that University of Bristol have now passed the deadline. So it looks like they're not going to take an appeal to the Supreme Court, but of course they could.
There's always the possibility that they could go to the Court of Appeal, but this is the first deadline that David referred to there has passed.
What a sigh of relief. This has gone on for so many years for him. We're just 4 months into all of this.
I know. It feels like it's been 25 years.
That he's done this for years. Yeah. So that's good news.